Let's go.
All right, good afternoon and welcome everyone to the 21st Central Texas African American Family Support Conference. Before we get started, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our Spanish interpreters, Bianca and Carmen, for being here today. And if you will, I'm just going to give them a moment to give us some instructions.
Muy buenas tardes. Lo que quería decirles el día de hoy es que si alguno de ustedes en la audiencia está interesado en escuchar la conferencia en español, solamente tienen que ir a la esquina derecha de sus pantallas donde ven un globito, es pichar ahí y ahí ven que hay dos canales, uno en inglés y otro en español. Entonces, para escuchar en español, simplemente tienen que espichar el canal en español. También si quieren hacer alguna pregunta, la pueden hacer sin ningún problema en su idioma, que o Carmen o yo se la traducimos al inglés para que los demás asistentes a la conferencia puedan entenderlo. Esperamos verlos allá. Muchas gracias. There you go, Kimberly.
Exactly. I was waiting for the muchas gracias. Again, thank you to our Spanish interpreters, Bianca and Carmen, for being here. We are so grateful. Again, good afternoon and welcome to the 21st Central Texas African American Family Support Conference. My name is Kimberly Holiday and I have the honor of serving as your moderator for today's keynote presentation, From Homeless to Hero, Overcoming Trauma and Changing Your Life. But before we get started, while we wait for others to come on in the room, normally I like to sing it, but I won't. I just want to ask a few questions, and you can put these, your answers in the chat box as we allow others to come on in. Now, of course, if you've been in any of the sessions, I know probably your favorite ice cream, but I want to take this opportunity to ask you, what's been the most meaningful part of the conference for you thus far? If you could put your just put your answers in the chat box, that'd be wonderful. Answer some of these questions or all. Describe your day in color. I always tell everyone I like green because it's cool and mellow. And then a shout out again to DJ Heliella, who did an amazing job keeping us pumped up with the music. What has been your song during this conference? Because I tell everybody that music is my medicine. So what's been your song, or what's a theme song that you play in the mornings to get you up and moving? Get It Together by NDRE is one of mine that comes to mind. During a bout of depression, my husband would play that song on repeat until I commanded my soul to get up and moving. I'm just going to let more people in the room, and at 2 o'clock we'll get started. If you want to just let us know how you're feeling today, a virtual check-in. How are you feeling today? And then as we go through these unprecedented times of COVID-19, what are you practicing as your self-wellness and self-care for getting through this time of COVID-19 while we are sheltered in place? I've learned how to get dressed and fix this face and dress waist up like in 10 minutes to get to the camera. So easy. Again, thank you all for being here. I know you could have been anywhere else. I thank you for being intentional. Thank you for putting those answers in the chat box. We'll get started here in just a moment. Again, give yourself some gratitude and appreciation for making way for this virtual space. Again, I tell everybody I like to kick off my shoes and just run around the room. It's time for us to get started. We want to honor your time. It's 2 o'clock. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor at this session, Methodist Healthcare Ministries. We are grateful for their support and make this event possible. Now, we have a few housekeeping items we must go over together. I want to remind you that this is a safe, supportive space. Please help us maintain a respectful and inclusive environment. Please mute yourself at all times if you are not speaking. Remember that we are live on Facebook. And to communicate, please use the chat function in the Whova to interact with other attendees. For questions for the presenter, use the Q&A function in Whova. If at any time you begin to feel overwhelmed or you need to talk to someone during this session, please call 512-472-4357. Again, that's 512-472-4357. Press 1 and then 1 again for immediate emotional support. Between sessions, you can visit the Comfort Suite where we provide a safe haven. You'll find the Comfort Suite in the Community tab under the main navigation in Whova. At the end of the session, there will be a link to the workshop evaluation in the chat, so please be looking for that. I also need to let you know that we have some great conference merchandise, so be sure to check out our online store at ctaafsc.com/shop. All right, please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Dr. Brenda Combs. Also, I want to just take this opportunity to thank those in the background who are making this possible. Again, Dr. Brenda Combs. After being homeless for 10 years, Dr. Combs now shares her incredible story and transformation as a motivational speaker, singer, teacher, author, publisher, playwright, and community activist. She grew up in a middle-class family, but fell into a bad crowd and began using drugs and dropped out of school. During her darkest days on the streets, Dr. Combs endured unspeakable trauma, including being beaten, shot, stabbed, raped, and burned with cigarettes. It took hitting rock bottom for her to find the strength to turn her life around. Dr. Combs set her sights on education. As a single mother of her son, Michael, who suffered a massive stroke at birth, she juggled 3 jobs while earning her bachelor's, master's, and her doctorate. Her journey has received national coverage, including an article in Reader's Digest, as well as interviews on CNN News and NBC's Today Show. You can learn more about Dr. Combs by reading her bio in Whova. Now, without any further delay, I would like to present to some and introduce to others the beautiful Dr. Brenda Combs. I'll be back for questions and answers. Welcome, Dr. Combs.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings. My name is Dr. Brenda Combs. I am the Ambassador of Inspiration, and I bring you greetings today from Phoenix, Arizona. And I'm very honored to share with you today my journey of overcoming 10 years of homelessness, addiction, trauma, and abuse to getting back into society as a productive member, turning my life around and getting my degrees and becoming Dr. Brenda Combs. And I just want to share with you some tips and suggestions and then open up for questions afterwards. To start with, I was born in Mississippi. I love Mississippi. And eventually my mother moved to Arizona, and I went to school in Arizona. And one of the things that was the beginning of my struggle, I was only 5 years old. And at the age of 5, I had a traumatic experience happened, and I believe it changed my destiny. At the age of 5, I had an experience that caught me so off guard that it took away my self-confidence, my self-worth, and my self-esteem. And I'm sure many of you know, without feeling any confidence in yourself, without believing in yourself, without believing in yourself, it's virtually impossible to move forward and have a healthy life, believing that your dreams can come true, because you just don't have that belief. And what happened was, when I was 5 years old, I was transferred to a school out of my neighborhood. And I happened to be the only Black girl, the only little girl of color in my class. And there was a little boy there. His name was Grover. And for whatever the reason is, this kid did not like me. He did not like me at all. And he was a mean boy, and he would call me names, just being a bully. But one day he called me the N-word. And then he spit in my face in front of everyone. And I was humiliated. I'm sure I felt grossed out. But the lack of my self-confidence, what destroyed me, is when I went to my teacher, who should have protected me, and I told her, hey, Grover just spit in my face. He called me the N-word. He said I was stupid. And she looked me in the eye and she said, Brenda, wipe your face off and get back in line. And I was crushed. I just felt like no one cared about me. And I continued through school with that same feeling. And it was difficult for me to have relationships and authentic friendships, because I honestly didn't think that people liked me or that they cared about me. And I played a lot of mental what if games with myself. What if they don't like me? What if I can't find any friends? Just the what if games. So I decided that my problem was the kids that I went to school with. It probably wasn't me, it was them. So I decided to graduate from high school early, went to summer school, got all of my credits, and graduated a year before my graduating class, and then started college. And I found out rather quickly that I didn't fit in with the college crowd either, because they were really way above my level. As a teenager, of course, we think we know everything. But it was a struggle because I was immature. I was a high school girl, really, in a young adult world. And I started to not make good choices, but I did meet a group of girls that accept everyone. And this was the party group. They accepted me with open arms and took me in. And this was a new experience for me, because growing up with my parents really focused on getting a great education, speaking proper English, going to church on Sunday, participating in church activities and family time together. So my parents, they didn't smoke, they didn't drink, they didn't party, they didn't use bad language. They worked and they spent time with their family. And that's how I was raised. And they loved me and they gave me love and showed me love. But that experience at 5 just did something to me to where I didn't love myself. I received love from my parents, but I felt like they were supposed to love me, but I didn't love myself. And I wasn't good to myself. So getting involved with those girls, the party group, was natural. It was easy because I was so hungry, as many people, to fit in. And I really didn't understand a lot about life, love, or living. But I tried to find myself. And so hanging out with these girls going out and partying and, being a young adult, I learned the hard way that it is really difficult to go out and hang out every night and then get up and go to class the next morning. And I had a full ride scholarship to Northern Arizona University. And I eventually started, missing class and dropping out of class and dropping classes, and eventually lost my scholarship and dropped out of school. Dropped out of school probably before they kicked me out of school. And that was another level of my downfall, was dropping out of school, because I took away my chance of growth and development. I took away the chance for me to learn how to love myself, how to appreciate who I was. I still didn't have a hope for a future. And I was still playing these mental games of what if, and not being positive. And so eventually, after dropping out of school, and keep in mind, those girls, they didn't drop out of school. Every last one of those girls graduated from college, and I dropped out. And so yet again, it was almost like another dagger. I felt bad yet again that here I am, not successful at something else. I can't have friends. I can't graduate from school. And so eventually I just got a job and just started working. I worked at the bank, and I got a car and an apartment, but I was still partying. And that partying eventually led me to people who were doing drugs. And doing drugs was the next thing on my agenda. And I opened myself up to hang out with these people and to start doing drugs. And it didn't take long, not long at all, for me to become addicted, not only to the drugs, but to the lifestyle. And it was because I was surrounded by people like myself, people who were hurting, people who were lost, who were confused, who didn't believe in themselves, who didn't love themselves, who some didn't have an education, some did, but many of them were struggling to find themselves. They didn't know who they were, and certainly weren't contributing in any type of positive way to society. And I just found myself just going from group to group, from person to person, from this hangout to that hangout, from this club to this bar, to, this set of friends to this group of friends, just trying to find a way to fit in. And eventually I hooked up with some people who were doing cocaine. And next thing I know, I'm doing cocaine almost every day. And then crack comes on the scene, and my life takes yet another level, but a step down, another step down. And I'm gonna say, from the very first moment I ever tried crack cocaine, I was a full-fledged addict, just an addicted person. I didn't necessarily understand addiction as a disease, but I was definitely an addict from the very first time I tried it. And it consumed every moment of my life. I put myself in dangerous situations and made, bad choices. My behavior was inappropriate, was all over the place. I was not a law-abiding citizen, and I certainly was not a productive member of society. And my self-esteem, yet again, took, you didn't think it could get any lower. It took another nosedive, because I went from at least being a productive, active member of society when I was working at the bank, to now I'm a drug addict and I can barely get myself to work, because I spend most of my time either at the drug house or at someone's party house using drugs. And it became a vicious cycle. And, you know, I may be repeating information that you've heard again and again, but for me, it literally was a vicious cycle. I had no idea at that moment that I was a drug addict. In my mind, in my sick mind, in my uneducated, unhealthy mind, I was just hanging out. I was just getting high. I was just trying to make friends. I wasn't doing anything wrong in my mind. At the same time, though, I was not happy. I was not at peace. I wasn't doing anything positive. And there was a big portion of time where I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. I didn't feel comfortable in the environment or the house or the place that I was at, the hotel room, the club, the dope house, wherever. I didn't feel safe and I didn't feel comfortable or confident. But because I was addicted, I couldn't stop myself. The urges and the compulsion was stronger than any desire that I had to not be an addict. And, you know, no one, I didn't start life, you know, with a desire to grow up to be a drug addict. You know, I think my first dream was to be an executive secretary. I didn't even know what an executive secretary did. I didn't even know what the job description was, but it sounded important and I wanted to be important. And I wanted to be an executive secretary. I also wanted to take a trip to Paris. When I was 8, I saw a movie on TV, a black and white movie. I don't remember who was in it, but what I do remember was in the movie, the actress went to the window and she pulled the curtains back, and in the distance was the Eiffel Tower and it was snowing. And I remember crying. I don't know why, but it just seemed like such a special place. And I remember telling myself, one day I want to go to Paris and it's snowing. And, you know, as a drug addict, as I'm going from the dope house to my apartment to the dope house, I never in a million years could picture myself making dreams come true, much less going to Paris. And eventually, as it happens with all addicts, eventually I got caught breaking the law, buying dope, getting dope, being in the dope house and going to jail and being in and out of jail, starting that vicious cycle now of being in and out of jail, going from being a productive member of society to now I'm a criminal. And now I'm in and out of jail. Now I'm on probation. Now I'm being threatened with going to prison and doing prison time. And in and out of rehab and therapy and rehab and sober living and transitional living and 3/4 house and halfway house and back to rehab. And then, you know, getting clean for a little bit, but not really surrendering to the process of recovery. So I would just continue to relapse again and again and again. And before I knew it, literally a decade, 10 years went by. And eventually, of course, I lost my apartment. I lost my job. I was sleeping in my car, which I eventually sold it for drugs. And I found myself underneath the 7th Avenue Bridge in downtown Phoenix, a homeless drug addict with no education, with no hope, with no goals, with no dreams, no focus, no ability to see a way out. In the time frame that I was homeless, I was stabbed in the back with a broken beer bottle. I was hit by a car. I overdosed, of course, several times. I was raped several times, burned with cigarettes. I was hit by a car. Of course, people like myself, I tried to commit suicide because I didn't believe in myself. you know, and sometimes I was in such pain from either the lack of drugs or from being raped or being beaten or being abused, being taken advantage of, that I felt like dying was the only option available. And in fact, I remember one time I took a bottle of sleeping pills and a bottle of pain medication, and yet I woke up the next morning. And I remember saying, man, I can't even do this right. You know, in the bigger picture, I didn't realize that there was a greater purpose for my life. Because of course, at that time and in those circumstances and situations, I couldn't see a purpose. I couldn't feel a purpose. I couldn't understand that there was a purpose for my life. I was literally just trying to survive. I wasn't even trying to thrive. I was just trying to survive. And after 10 years, eventually, my life took another stage step. And one day I woke up in an alley behind the dope house. It happened to be 115 degrees outside in Phoenix. And I realized that someone had stolen the shoes off of my feet. And where that alley was at was about a mile away from the park where the homeless would hang out, sleep, and hang out in this park. It dawned on me when my feet touched the ground and there was broken glass there that I was going to have to walk a mile with no shoes on to get help, because I couldn't stay in that alley. As a woman, as a female, behind a dope house with no shoes on, I was going to be a victim. My intuition told me that I probably was not going to live if I did not find a way to get to a public setting where there were other people. So I made my way down this alley that was littered with broken glass and beer bottles and syringes. It was dirty, it was not clean. And by the time I made it to the street, I had cuts on the bottom of my feet, and I still had about a mile to go to get to the park. And by the time I made it to the park, I had second and third degree burns on my feet. They were blistered, they were burned, they were bleeding. I was in excruciating pain, excruciating. And when I finally made it to the park where the homeless community was gathered, some of my friends had to come and get me, because by that time I was on my hands and knees crawling down the sidewalk because the pain was so intense. And I passed out. And when I eventually came to, I remember looking around the park, looking around the environment that I was in, and just thinking, probably for the first time in 10 years, Brenda, what are you doing? Something has got to change, because I can't go on like this. I just can't, Lord. I need help. I cannot live my life like this. And essentially what I did was I basically said my prayers. And let me back up. It's not that I didn't pray in the 10 years that I was homeless and living underneath the bridge. I did what I would call like bargaining prayers, like, God, please don't let me get caught. Don't let the police pull me over. Please let me get out of this situation. And if I get out of this situation, I promise I'm gonna go turn myself in, do my time, go back home, make amends with my family, and then go back to school. And so to me, that was like my bargaining, like prayer, you know? And so many times during the times when I would do this bargaining, I wouldn't get stopped, or the police would pull us over, but their computer systems would be down, so they couldn't run our names and IDs, and we would get away. And of course I didn't go turn myself in, do my time, go back home, make amends to my family, and then enroll in school. No, I continued back out in the streets doing what I normally would do. But on this day, when my shoes were stolen and I walked a mile with no shoes on and I got to the park, I literally looked around and just said, God, I don't know what it is that I'm supposed to do with my life because I have no goals and I have no dreams. But I do know that I do not want to be homeless another day. And I don't want to be a drug addict. And God, I am asking you, please, to take it away from me. And I can tell you, because this is my story, that immediately I literally felt like a cool breeze of wind blowing on my skin in 115-degree heat in the middle of summer in Phoenix, Arizona. I felt a cool breeze blowing on my skin. And it was like something was telling me, it was like the voice of God saying, I hear you, Brenda. I got you. You won't be homeless. You won't be homeless anymore. You're not going to be a drug addict. It was like I could hear it. And I jumped up and kind of told the people around me, the other homeless people around me, I was like, you know what, guys? I'm going to go turn myself in. And of course, no one believed me because I can't even count how many times I made that same statement. It was just like crying wolf. I'm going to go turn myself in because things didn't work out. I'm going to go turn myself in. And I never turned myself in. But on this day, when my shoes were stolen and I walked a mile in 115-degree heat, I went and I turned myself in. And I had it all planned out in my head. Okay, well, I've taken a huge step. I turned myself in. So now, of course, I'm going to go do my time. But when I finish my time, I'll get out and I'll go back home. I will make amends with my family this time. And then I'll get back in school and you know, my life will be perfect. So I turned myself in, y'all, and it did not go as planned. My PO, when I turned myself in, she looked me in the eye and she said, Brenda Combs, I don't know what it is about you, but there's something different about you. And I am not going to sign the warrant that I have for your arrest. Instead, I'm going to give you one more opportunity to get some help and to turn your life around, because putting you in jail or prison is not going to benefit you or society. Yet I believe in you. Well, y'all, that took me back because, you know, yes, I know that my parents believed in me, but this probation officer, when she said that to me, it took me back. I can tell you that at first I did not believe her, because why would she believe in me? I'm a homeless drug addict who had absconded, who had broken the law, which is the reason I was on probation to begin with. Why would you believe in me? But she saw something in me. It was like she believed in me when I wasn't able to believe in myself. This is the part where community comes in. This is the part where we come in as a community. When you see something, you have to say something. You have to do something when you're able to help. And she saw something in me and she was able to do something. She required for me to get counseling and to get therapy because she had given me a journal and I was writing in the journal. And in this journal, I shared a lot about the nightmares that I had because I had a hard time sleeping. I had a hard time sleeping because I was reliving a lot of traumatic memories of abuse and neglect and trauma. And it was causing me to relapse again and again and again. And as she was reading my journal, she basically was telling me that, you know, I was struggling with PTSD, you know, and I had been mentally abused. And I didn't look at everything that I had went through as mental abuse, as trauma, as post-traumatic stress disorder. I didn't look at it that way. I, again, was still blaming myself because I was the one that was using the drugs. I was the one that was getting high. But when she encouraged me to get counseling, to get therapy, to not just get only a sponsor, but to get counseling, to get therapy, to take an assertiveness training class. And she gave me the positive reinforcement. And I decided this time, and this was program number 13, program number 13 that I went into. And I will say that program number 13 was no different than program number 1. Your basic program is, they basically follow the basic 12 steps. The decor may be a little bit different. Maybe some of the rules may vary, but a basic program is the same. The difference is that I was ready to listen and take some suggestions. That was the difference between program 1 and program 13. And combining that with therapy and with counseling. And I went through this program and it changed my life because I was able to finally look myself in the mirror and start believing in myself. I was able to look myself in the mirror and start seeing Brenda Combs. The drug addict was falling. The homelessness was falling. The lack of self-worth was falling. My self-confidence was rising. My self-esteem was building. I was starting to believe in myself. And in my program, I will say this, it was while I was in rehab that I met my now ex-husband, and we got back into society together, got married, and I had a really cute little baby boy. And my son suffered a massive stroke at birth. He has permanent brain damage in the left cortex part of his brain. He was paralyzed, he couldn't swallow. The doctors didn't give us a lot of hope for his future. And my husband, who was also an addict / alcoholic, relapsed repeatedly. And so now here I am, Brenda Combs, no education, feeling a little bit confident about myself with a baby that has disabilities. I'm now divorced, single mom, living in the projects, working at Denny's. And I'm starting to feel overwhelmed, as a lot of single moms do, as a lot of parents do, just being a parent. And because of my son's disabilities, I had a unique situation with my babysitter because I worked a very unique shift where I would go to work at 5 p.m. on a Friday and work until 5 a.m. Sunday morning with 8 hours, 4-hour break, 8-hour, 4-hour break. And so my son was on Nutramigen, which is a very expensive formula. And I didn't have any money to buy diapers and formula. So I needed to work at Denny's, and I was taking him to the babysitter, and the babysitter canceled. And I had no money. So I took my son with me to Denny's, and I put him in his car seat up on the non-smoking counter because he had asthma, and, you know, I'm trying to be a good mom. And I'm working to make this money. And it was around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm looking at my son sitting up on the counter at Denny's. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks that I was still not feeling complete because I didn't have an education. There was nothing wrong with working at Denny's. I was making an honest living. I was a productive member. in society, but I was still lacking something on the inside. And I could feel the little bit of confidence that I had starting to go down. And it dawned on me it was because I dropped out of school. I didn't have an education. I wasn't giving myself any more choices and options. I was just working and paying bills and working and paying bills. And of course, as many parents, I want my son to have better than what I was currently offering him. So that Monday, I went and enrolled in school, and I did everything on the fast track. I completed my undergrad while working 2 and 3 jobs in human services. I then enrolled at the University of Phoenix in their online program. And then I enrolled at Grand Canyon University for a master's degree in special education. And it was a 3-year program, and they allowed me to triple up on my classes. And I completed that program. I started that program on January 5th and completed my master's on December 24th of the same year. And that got the attention of the White House. And at my graduation, at my master's graduation, I was honored by former First Lady Laura Bush, and I was named Distinguished Teacher of the Year. And about a week later, I appeared on CNN, and I was given a full ride scholarship to Grand Canyon University, and I was the first enrollee in their first doctoral program. And I was in the first graduating class of doctoral students at Grand Canyon University 3 years later, publishing my dissertation on the success factors and strategies that enabled women to overcome homelessness. And during the middle of my doctoral program, I got an email from a man who had been homeless for 20 years, who actually had been underneath the 7th Avenue Bridge. I met him underneath the 7th Avenue Bridge. And he sent me an email saying that I had encouraged him just by sharing my story, by me going back to school and getting my degree and sharing my story. It encouraged him that if I could do it, he could do it. And he went back to school and got his degree. And we ended up meeting for coffee at Starbucks and got married. And today we have been married 10 years. My husband, Tony Carter, has 2 master's degrees. He's a behavior therapist and working on becoming a professional licensed counselor. And we've been married almost 11 years. But anyway, back to my story. So after completing my doctorate, I started a publishing company because I often in class, I became a professor at Grand Canyon University and shared not only my story with my students, but I also taught in the College of Education and Special Education. And sharing my story with my students to let them know that absolutely nothing is impossible, because I firmly believe we already have gifts and talents that we're born with. But sometimes we need help. We need therapy. We need counseling. We need mentors. We need life coaches. We need teachers. We need to attend conferences. We need webinars, seminars, workshops, because there's so much out there that we don't know. And there's so much out there that we can give and contribute to if we only knew, if we only had the information, if we only had the content. And so I started BRC Publishing because I wanted to share my story and to let other people know that, you know, if I could go from being a homeless drug addict to being Dr. Brenda Combs, that you too can do whatever it is that you want to do, making your goals and dreams become a reality. And I didn't just stop at that. I also started a nonprofit called Finding My Shoes Foundation. And I partner with a variety of people and groups and agencies and churches and schools and organizations all over the Valley. And we hold different types of events And we provide shoes, clothes, water, hygiene items for the homeless community, for people still living underneath the 7th Avenue Bridge, for students at the homeless school, and for our neighbors who are homeless, who are in need. And then my husband and I started sober living homes for men and women called Making Things Better Sober Living, where we provide a clean, safe, stable, sober living environment coupled with resources, classes, and meetings, because, you know, we both know what it's like to struggle with addiction and homelessness, and how difficult that is. Because most of the time people aren't dealing with just addiction and homelessness. Generally, you know, some type of trauma, abuse, uh, mental health, mental illness goes along with that. And not only, I want to cover that, talking about the family as well. But I wanted to share with you, give you an update when I was talking about my son, Michael, that he had suffered a massive stroke. So fast forward, today, my son, Michael, just turned 21 Sunday. He is a college student. He made a full recovery from his stroke. He is attending college on a basketball scholarship. He is also a national ambassador for the American Stroke Association because he's the youngest person to make a full recovery from a massive stroke. It was a lot of work, and it took me and him a lot of therapy, a lot of counseling, a lot of time, a lot of love, a lot of time spent together, and a lot of belief in him. For him to make it through. And my son, Michael, when he was in 9th grade, he came home from school one day with a dog. And his teacher had emailed me a persuasive essay because they were having pet adoption day at the school. Luckily, we only got a dog. Some parents got iguanas and snakes and a whole bunch of other stuff. But my son brought home a dog. Her name was Shyla. And then a couple of days after that, my son brought home a young man who was in high school but homeless, who was living in his car. And then a few weeks after that, another young man who needed a place to stay. And a few weeks after that, another homeless young man. I ended up adopting a young man. We eventually took in 4 teenage boys that were in need of a home. And my son went from being an only child to having siblings. And it changed my life, my son's life, my husband's life. It changed the whole trajectory of our family. And I shared that to share with you that I am a firm believer that community is the answer to many problems. You know, one of the things that I am definitely big on is communication and love and forgiveness. Love is the answer to all of our problems all over the world, because love starts with self. If I love myself, then I'm only going to want the best for myself. And I believe that I have to love myself to really thoroughly love others and want what's best for them. Now, if I combine that love with compassion and forgiveness, because we know that everybody makes mistakes, nobody is perfect, then we, as a community, if we practice love, compassion, and forgiveness, then we already have what it takes to make the world a better place. It's not about making people believe what you believe or seeing things your way. It's about communication, love, compassion, and forgiveness. I want to share with y'all an affirmation that I wrote when I first got back into society. And I felt like I had I think they call it a scarlet letter. I felt like I had a neon sign on my head that I was struggling because I didn't feel mentally strong. I didn't feel emotionally strong. I didn't feel spiritually strong. And I certainly wasn't financially strong. And I did not have a support system. I didn't have a group of friends that understood what I was going through, that weren't going to be judgmental, that were going to be there to hold me accountable, that could help me get to this next level, that could help me with my mental health issues, that could help me with my trauma, with my abuse, with dealing with being raped, with dealing with low self-esteem, with no confidence, with dealing with the sting of addiction every time I fill out an application and have to check, have you ever been convicted of a felony, you know, of dealing with these issues that can hold you down. So I wrote this positive affirmation to encourage myself because I didn't have someone to encourage me. And I want to share this affirmation with you. And if anyone wants a copy of it, I can certainly upload it and send it out. But it's called, I believe in myself. I believe in myself and my ability to do my best. I am intelligent and I am capable of achieving greatness. I can learn, I will learn, I must learn. Today I will think, I will listen, and I will reason. Today I will make the best choices, and my life will be a reflection of those choices. Today I will read, I will write, I will learn to work with, love, and value others. I won't give up when to give up would be easier. And it's easier to give up, but I won't because I love myself and I value life. And life is too precious to do it any other way. So for today, I'm going to make the right choice and I'm going to do the right thing, even when no one is watching. You know, the most important part, at least I feel, excuse me, is the even when no one is watching. The reality is someone's always watching. You know, in many ways, we are all leaders to some degree because someone's always watching. I feel like I take every moment in life and I use it to either learn from or to grow from. And over my years now, this year will be 26 years. 26 years ago since I was last a homeless and hopeless addicted drug addict living underneath the 7th Avenue Bridge in downtown Phoenix. And I can't even tell you how beautiful it is, life is for me today. You know, dealing with all of my trauma and my mental health and my abuse, especially talking about it, I'm going to tell you, for me, it gave me freedom. I feel liberated. I am at peace. I am happy. I am overwhelmed. I am elated. I'm not a perfect person. You know, I still make mistakes. And I still try to follow, basically the golden rule. I try to treat people with love and kindness. When I'm wrong, I try to quickly admit it, apologize, make amends. Because I have found for me, in order for me to be healthy, mentally strong, physically, emotionally, I have to be brutally honest. It's like I tell my students, I look at everything in life as if it was a movie. When it comes down to it, I'm the author of my life story. It's up to me now how my story goes. It's up to me if my story is filled with drama, if it's a comedy, if it's a horror, if it's sci-fi, if it has a happy ending. It's up to me, because it's all about the choices that I make. I have to always play the tape all the way through. So I just want to reiterate that as we come together as a family, as a community, there's so much talent. There's so many gifts out there among us that there is no reason that we can't be that village that communicates, that loves, that's compassionate, forgives. It's the each one teach one. We have what it takes in order to help make our community and our world a better place. I'm not perfect at all. I hope that by sharing my story of overcoming all of my issues has been beneficial to let you know that, the odds were against me. The odds were against me to overcome addiction. That in itself is so difficult. We know that people don't make it, or they spend a lifetime trying to overcome, addiction. Many people will spend their entire life either dealing with their mental health issues or not dealing with their mental health issues and not living life on life terms. We also know that it takes a village. We know that nothing is impossible. I know that as hard as life was for me, I can actually tell you that I am blessed by everything that I went through, because in all honesty, it made me a much better person today. Today, I have so much more sympathy and empathy for others. Being a homeless drug addict changed everything, but then overcoming those issues and dealing with them and being honest about it has also made me a much better person. I just want y'all to know that anything that I can do to help encourage you, to let you know that you're not alone in how you feel and the issues that you're dealing with, because all of the things that I talked about, that's not just an individual thing. That's a family thing. That affects your sisters, your brothers, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents, your teachers, your community. But the blessing is that we have so many resources today. Even in COVID, yes, it's difficult, but we have so many resources available today. There's so many people. There's been, this conference has been filled with so many resources. There's so much out there that we can help each other, that we just have to take advantage of it. Take advantage of all of the resources. I'm here to help in any way that I can, because I believe that love, compassion, and forgiveness is the answer. You know, by communicating with each other, by having these open dialogues, by having communication, and by letting people know, hey, I need help. Hey, there's help over here. So this is Dr. Brenda Combs. I bring you greetings again from Phoenix, Arizona. And I would love the opportunity right now to answer any questions that you may have. And again, if anyone wants a copy of the positive affirmation, I believe in myself, I can upload that. I'm sure we can get it to you. And just reach out to me. I'm on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Please go to my website, purchase my book. More in depth is in my book that goes into detail. There's pictures there. I just want to reiterate, I'm here. Just reach out to me. I'm always available to help. You know, I love y'all. We are all family because we are all on the same page. We all need help. And then when we don't need help and we have the ability to give it, I have the ability to give it right now. And I want to be able to give of my time and of my service. So do we have any questions out there?
Wow. First of all, I want to take this opportunity to just thank you for sharing yourself, Dr. Brenda Combs, so real and authentic. I was so focused and, you know, we were watching for questions, and this is probably the first time we didn't have any questions because everyone is simply glued to every word you had to say. So the questions are beginning to come in now. We have someone that has their hand up, Willie, as that person prepares.
I actually have a question on my end. Someone texts me a question, and you know what? Every single time, I always forget this. The question is, how's the relationship with my family? So I'll answer that question. So today, I have a great rapport with my family. Of course, being homeless for 10 years was devastating, probably more so on my mother than it was probably on anyone else. However, I was probably 8 years clean when my mom finally gave me the key to her house again. So I've established a great rapport with my mom. My father passed away a year ago, may he rest in peace, but the blessing is that my father was able to see me not only live out my dream, but, you know, become Dr. Brenda Combs. And he was very proud of the woman that I am today. And I'm still living my dream. So I know that he's up there watching. So the relationship with my family was repaired. They didn't give up on me. It was difficult. The hardest part for my mother was dealing with the fact that I suffered from PTSD and that I got counseling for mental health issues. But I needed all of that. It was the biggest part of my healing because a lot of my downfall was my self-sabotage, and self, negative talk. So hopefully I answered that question.
Wow, thank you for that. So it looks like we have Papa Willie who has his hand up. I want to remind you again that you may raise your virtual hand if you would like to speak and ask your questions or put them in the Q&A. Papa Willie, if you'll go ahead. If not, I definitely got some questions. Go right ahead, Willie Williams. Yeah, I want to know more about your singing and how you use singing as your self-care medicine. We're waiting for Willie Williams. I also have another hand that has come up from Mr. and Mrs. Brown. I can't really see that.
Well, while their hands are held up, I got a little song. How about that?
All right.
Okay. This is called It's up to you. So it's just a little theme that I used to sing to my students. It's up to you. You can make your dreams come true. If you believe, then you can achieve all of your dreams. If you can see it, then you can do it. If you believe it, you can achieve it. It's up to you. You can make your dreams come true. And you can, because it is up to you.
That is so beautiful. All right, I'm waiting for Ayani Brown and Willie Williams. I can see them here, but I need them to unmute. And in the
Oh,
meantime,
I see, Willie.
here we
Okay.
go. Thank you. Oh, how beautiful you are. Thank you so much for being here, Ayani. If you can unmute yourself, we'd love to have your question. Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi.
I just did. Hi, ladies. How are y'all? So I'm just
Hi.
sitting here listening. I really did not expect for everything to be so raw and open, and I actually appreciate it because I am a student that learns like that. I'm here. I'm a senior at Houston Tillotson University in Austin, Texas, and I was just really interested to know because I took an addictions course, and we learned all of the technicalities of how things that people can be addicted to and whatnot, and how it starts. And I just wanted to know that when you were first introduced, like, to crack or cocaine, like, you didn't have any like nervous feels or like second thoughts. I know you said that you weren't really like aware of like actual like drug addictions and how they affect you, but like you didn't have like like, was it more so like a peer pressure thing, or was it more like an internal like feel like, oh, I'm already down in the dumps, it can't get any worse? Like, like, where was your mindset when it came to you like about to try it? I'm just really curious.
Right. That's a great question. For me personally, because I had such low self-esteem, it was two guys that actually offered me the crack. So for me, yes, I had fear because in the back of my head, gosh, you hear these stories, first time they ever did it, they died. And so I had the fear, but the fear of not being accepted and not being liked was greater than the fear of dying, that I was willing to take that chance. I was scared, yes. But again, my fear of not being accepted or them telling me to leave was greater. So I was willing to take that chance. And that was every time I ever, until I was a full-fledged addict, which really within a 24-hour period of time, I became a drug addict. I mean, overnight. Yes, I used to smoke weed back in the day. I would, I've tried some pills here and there. Even when I snorted cocaine, that was more like it would be for a party, and then we wouldn't do it for, weeks or months. But with crack, within 24 hours, I couldn't stop. But I was scared in the back of my head, but I wouldn't stop because I didn't want them not to like me. And they were showing me attention, and I thrived on, I just wanted to fit in.
Thank you, Ayani, for your question. And thank you, Dr. Combs, for your raw transparency. We have some questions. They're beginning to flow in. One of the first questions is, how can we support hope in communities where discouragement and hopelessness permeate?
Now, that's a good question. I can tell you this is my opinion. There are many people like myself who can speak to those people, because 10 years, that's a long time. That's a long time to be a homeless drug addict. I have the lived experience of being at the very bottom of the barrel in society. Now I'm on the other side, and I can show you through my lived experience that it's going to take love, compassion, forgiveness mixed with community resources. The biggest issue that we're going to have, the biggest hurdle is going to judgment. Because if people don't understand that addiction is a disease, that mental health issues is a disease, then there's judgment, and you have to get past the judgment in order to see the heart. So like how I used to see some of my students back when I was teaching the K-8 sector, you know, I had some hard students. And so in my mind, I had to tell myself, okay, I'm going to look at these students as if they're Michael, my son. I love my son than anything on earth, and there's nothing I wouldn't do in his best interest that would benefit him. So then when little, when little Willie would start acting up, and I would catch myself getting ready to say something or maybe not be as loving as I could, I would immediately think, Michael. Now I'm looking at Willie in a whole different perspective. I'm able to look at him through the eyes of unconditional love. And I personally know this to be true, that I was a much better teacher to little Willie when I looked at him through the eyes of conditional love. So we too, as a community, we have to get past the judgment. We have to overlook that. That's where the compassion comes in, and that's where the forgiveness comes in, and then take our resources with our life experiences, because the only way we're going to help our community is to get past those judgmental issues to help that person. Therefore, there are other people in your community like myself that have those lived experiences, that want to help, that are waiting to give, that are waiting to share. They are all over the place. There are people like me all over the place. And they don't have to have, as dramatic of a story as mine, but there are people out there that have the experience and want to give, want to volunteer, want to lead, want to help.
This is so good. Thank you so much. I want to make room again for any of you who want to raise your virtual hand. The next question is, thank you for addressing PTSD. Do you suggest mental health treatment be more prevalent with addiction treatment? Oh,
great question. And the answer is yes. Because speaking for myself, I'm going to say at my sober living house, all of the women that we have, not only do these women have drug and alcohol, literally all of them have abuse and trauma, PTSD to some degree. And that has been the biggest factor for many of them. They understand addiction. They understand the 12 steps. It's learning how to deal with the mental part, learning to deal with the trauma, learning to deal with those triggers. And in my opinion, if they're giving you the same goals for PTSD as they are for addiction or alcoholism, because they all are together, in my opinion. They all fit together. You can't address one without addressing the other, because then you're still not fully recovered. Because, okay, maybe a person isn't using, but they're still struggling mentally over here. Or they're okay mentally, but they can't stop drinking. So both of them have to be addressed together, because that way you're dealing with the whole person.
Come on. All right, thank you. Next question. How aware was your son of the challenges that you faced as a mother?
So when I had Michael, I was 5 years clean. So, and because I've been speaking since he's 5, in fact, with all of my boys, even the boys that I got when they were in high school, when they were about 14 or 15, I knew that, this generation, everything's online. So when my son, as he was growing and as he would go with me on my speaking engagements, I would share with him my background as he was appropriately able to understand, because I wanted him to hear it from me. I have no shame about my background because it's the truth. And it has made me who I am. I'm proud of who I am. I love being Dr. Brenda Combs. And so I have shared my background with my son and with all of my boys, and they are all proud of me. They love me. There's no shame. They've all read my book, so they know even more, especially the boys. But, excuse me. But with my son, Michael, he knows everything that there is about me, and he is so proud of me. He loves me. There's no need to hide my past because it's the truth. You know, I've used it to tell my story in a positive way because I've turned the negative around. So he's proud of me, and I'm proud of myself.
Yes. Someone wants to know if you ran track at NAU.
Now, good question. I have ran track on the track field at NAU, but not for NAU.
Thank you.
I was in the music program when I was at NAU.
Awesome. We still have a little more time, so I'm going to get into these questions a little bit deeper. If conversation with your younger self, the one who experienced so much trauma, what would you tell her?
Oh, great question. And what I would tell her, Brenda, what other people think of you is none of your business. Everyone's not going to be a friend or a fan. The people that are in your life that like you, you run with them till the wheels fall off. And when they leave or walk away, or when your time with them is up, appreciate the time that you had with them. Appreciate the lessons, appreciate the memories, appreciate the good and the bad. But what other people think of you is none of your business. And Brenda, the sooner you learn that lesson, the sooner you hold the keys to your future happiness. That's what I would tell the younger Brenda.
Woo! You see, I'm messing up my makeup. That's like a whole other affirmation right there. All right, let me see if I can see through my tears. And you know, by the way, I let people know that it's really good to allow those tears to fall to make room for more joy. Thank you again for sharing yourself so real and expressing your vulnerability with us. Next question. How do you get an individual to move from denial to seeking help? You talk to us about your rock bottom. And so this question is, how do you get them to make that shift?
So what my parents did with me and what I eventually did with my now ex-husband was I was truthful. My parents at first, like many people, were enablers, like a lot of people are. They gave me money. They let me come home. They fed me. They paid my bills. They would speak up for me even though they knew I was in the wrong. And eventually, when it finally dawned on them, hey, our daughter's a drug addict and we're not helping her. When the same thing happened with me years later with my ex-husband, what I had to do was get honest with love. And now here's the hard part. You have to let go and let that person live their life. That's the hard part. You literally have to let go, because the longer you hold on and enable, the longer it's going to take for them to get to wherever their bottom is. So the best thing that you can do is love and let go. With my parents, their bottom line was, hey, we love you, but as long as you're doing drugs, you cannot come to the house. We're not giving you any money. We're not giving you any food. You can't take a shower. No, you can't do your laundry. You know, no, I don't care how many times you call here crying hysterically, making up lies, even if someone's after you, if you're in jail, if you're in the hospital. No, unless you're in treatment, the bottom line is no. Now, for me, I didn't have an attitude with my parents, because actually that was the best thing they could do, because I was already embarrassed personally having to call them anyway. So by them saying no, just eliminated, okay, I just got to get a different hustle. But with my ex-husband, it was like, hey, he's drinking, he's gambling. Now he's got, erratic behavior. Is this how I want to raise my son? I know from being an addict that confrontation is not going to end well. So what I can do is to tell him, hey, these are the choices. You can go to rehab or I'll move, because I had the ability to do so. Because I can't agree with this behavior, but I can't make a person change. I'm only in charge of myself, and I can't enable. And that's the hard part, is letting go, because you really have to allow a person to get to where they're ready to change. And only an individual can do that. Enabling only makes the time longer, only makes it more difficult. So is it easy? No, because saying no and letting go are two of the hardest things, because we love.
Wow. Thank you so much. I want to honor our time. Of course, we sat glued to the screen listening to you. And then when you were done, all these questions and raised hands start going up. We are out of time. I want to take this opportunity once again, Dr. Brenda Combs, to thank you for so authentically sharing yourself with us today. We are so honored. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Do something and take care of yourself today.
Yeah.
In the background, I want to thank all those who took care of our tech support, and also to our Spanish interpreters, Carmen and Bianca. We are so grateful. Thank you again for being here for day 3 of the Central Texas African American Family Support Conference. My name is Kimberly Holiday, and it has been my pleasure to serve you. Enjoy the rest of your day.